Hello, welcome to Examining Fictional Heroes and the Authors Behind Them. My name is Wayne Browder. Today I want to talk to you a bit about fathers and sons. A lot has been written, and rightly so, about the need that boys have for a father in their lives and for the example of older men. But older men need that companionship as well, particularly when their sons get older, when they begin to grow up, and when they are grown. You don't hear a lot said about that, but it is nonetheless true. We still desire that relationship with our sons. Having said that, I'm going to read a few excerpts from a couple of books. I'm going to start with this book. This contains Tarzan and the Golden Lion and Tarzan and the Ant-Man. I'm going to read short segments from both. Start with Tarzan and the Golden Lion. When they find this lion cub orphaned, Tarzan decides that he is going to take it and raise it. And his wife and his son, who are with him, are skeptical of it. However, he does manage to grab the cub and to start to comfort it and gain its trust. "How do you do it?" exclaimed Jane Clayton. Tarzan shrugged his broad shoulders. "Your kind are not afraid of you. These are really my kind. Try to civilize me as you will. And perhaps that is why they are not afraid of me when I give them the signs of friendship. Even this little rascal seems to know it, doesn't he?" "I can never understand it," commented Korak. "I think I am rather familiar with African animals, yet I haven't the power over them or the understanding that you have. Why is it?" "There is but one Tarzan," said Lady Greystoke, smiling at her son teasingly. And yet her tone was not without a note of pride. "Remember that I was born among beasts and raised by beasts," Tarzan reminded him. "Perhaps after all my father was an ape. You know, Kala always insisted that he was." For those of you who are not familiar, Kala was his foster mother, who found him orphaned and raised him. "John, how can you?" exclaimed Jane. "You know perfectly well who your father and mother were." Tarzan looked solemnly at his son and closed one eye. "Your mother never can learn to appreciate the fine qualities of the anthropoids. One might think that she objected to the suggestion that she had mated with one of them." So there's a little bit of the humor that passes between them. But Korak is still skeptical, and he even goes so far as to wager against his father about whether he will be able to train the golden lion. He simply says, we'll see how easily the golden lion will make 100 pounds for me. Well, in the long run, Tarzan was right, but that doesn't matter at this point. In the next story, Tarzan and the Ant-Man, Tarzan is learning to fly a plane and had not at this time taken a solo flight, for which he is getting ready to do. His son Korak is a pilot and has trained others of the tribe to do so. Korak's wife, Miriam, says, you take such risks that one would think you considered yourself immortal. You should be more careful. The younger man threw his arm about his wife's shoulders. Miriam is right, he said. You should be more careful, father. Tarzan shrugged. If you and mother had your way, my nerves and muscles would have atrophied long since. They were given me to use, and I intend using them with discretion. Doubtless, I shall be old and useless soon enough, and long enough as it is. So, at this point, they're becoming a bit protective of him, even though he certainly doesn't need it. But the dynamic of how they interact with one another has changed from the time when he was a lad to the time when he's a grown man. Now, I'm going to take a few excerpts from one of my favorite Louis L'Amour books, and possibly my favorite of the Sackett series, To the Far Blue Mountains. This again is Barnabas Sackett, the first of the clan to come to America. And as I've said before, he is my favorite of the Sacketts. At the time of these, all his boys are grown. His wife is taking his daughter back to England so she could learn there and have a civilized life. And his son Brian is going back with her to read for the law. As they're waiting for a ship, a man named Jonathan Delve comes into the harbor in his ship, and Delve had served with Barnabas when they were first building their fort. And they split because of how he was. At any rate, he and his men are coming ashore, and they're informed of it. Ken, Barnabas's older son, and the others have been spying on them because they were not known to him. He is not idling here for nothing, I said. Aye, that he is not. Brian is just now sitting over ale with the sailor who's been aboard her. And if I know Brian, he will soon have all the man knows. Ken ran his fingers through his long hair. Pa, we may be late tonight. There's some looking about we'll do. Be easy with it, son. The British are no fools and are sharp upon the form and manner of things. A thought came to me. Where's Yance? Him? Ken said almost absent-mindedly. He's helping the blacksmith who is behind in his work. You know Yance. He must be busy all the time. Aye, I knew him. Busy indeed he was, but with what? Yance was never one to be idle, but often enough. His busyness was trouble. When Delve and his members of his crew start to come aboard, sure. We'll stand by you, I said. Aye, said Ken, that we will, if needed. But do not worry, Captain Powell. Arm your men and have them stand by, too. But they need fear no cannon fire. No cannon fire? He has 36 guns, man. Can you mean to say no cannon fire and him with 36 guns? Aye, Ken smiled his slow smile and looked up, his gray-green eyes alight in his lean brown face. And not a one of them will fire. Last night we went aboard, my brothers and I, with O'Hara and Jeremy Ring and Mr. Burke. And while two of us guarded the doors, just in case, we spiked every gun. Spiked them? Powell exclaimed. How could you, with men on watch? We'd be woodsmen, Captain Powell, who move quietly, even among Indians. They hurt us not. One man on watch was put quietly to sleep. The other, well, I regret to say, but one was strong and made a fight and took the blade like a good lad. He's down in the river now, drifting toward the Sound. Some guns were merely spiked, and in some we wedged cannonballs tight against the base of the bore and hammered them home snugly with wooden wedges. Oh, we made a few sounds then, but those aboard were snug asleep after all their rum, and we were not too much worried. What's needed now, Captain, I leave to you. But if it were me, I'd draw Delve's teeth by taking what powder he has left. We'd not want him chasing after a ship that carries our mother and sister, although Brian can take care of himself. Whose idea was it, I asked suspiciously, to go aboard at all? Ken smiled. Why, Yance's, of course, but it appealed to us, too. Would you have had us done other than what we did? You might at least have awakened me, I grumbled. Ken chuckled. It would have worried Ma. Then, too, you older men need your sleep. He ducked when I struck out at him and laughed at me with tender eyes. I thought of my father, Ivo Sackett. He would have loved them too. Later in the book, his son Jubal comes to him. And Jubal has been away for a while exploring the Western lands. Pa, you don't mind it that I am not like the rest? Of course not. You're a good man, Jubal, one of the very best. I love you as I do them. Folks crowd me, Pa. I like wild, lonesome country. I like the far-looking places. It ain't in me to live with folks. It's the trees, the rivers, the lake, and the wild animals I need. Maybe I'm one of them, a wild animal myself. I'm like that too, Jubal, almost as much as you. And now that your mother is gone, I could walk out that door and keep going forever. Well, they don't do that at that point, but Jubal leaves again to explore the West. And later on, his sons, Yance and Ken, and he plan to go out west together themselves. They are going to meet at a crabapple grove among the mountains. Barnabas is riding with his friend Black Tom Watkins, who we meet at the beginning of the book. This is my land. I breathe deeply of the fresh, cool air from off the mountains. This is what I had come for. This wide land, those tall boys who rode down the mountain to paths toward me. It was a land for men. And then he's speaking to Tom, or they're speaking to each other. We've ridden a good trail, Tom. A long ride since that night on the edge of the fens. I and the boys are old enough now to get on without us. He looked up at me, embarrassed. Barnabas, I hope you don't mind, but sometimes I think those boys are my own. That's the way I want it, Tom. You've been a second father to them, and a fine example. Example? Me? You're a man, Tom Watkins. A man to ride down the warpath with, or any path. You were there when the long guns spoke, and you were beside me when the blades were drawn, and when they were sheathed. And you never shirked a job that needed to be done. So, we see how Barnabas' sons had grown and how they moved into their own lives, but yet they still had plans together. And they were meeting one last time to go explore the Western lands. And as I said, his friend Tom Watkins was with him on this trip, who had never had sons of his own. So he had kind of taken those boys under his wing as well. So, what I want to say is that for you younger men out there, don't forget the older men in your life. They still need you. They still need to spend time with you. And they still need to have adventures with you. Even if it is more difficult for them to keep up now. I hope you enjoyed this, guys. I appreciate all of you being here. I appreciate any comments or criticisms or anything of that nature. Book suggestions, we could do that. Don't know how soon I would ever get to it, but I am open to it. Any likes and follows are also great. Apparently, I've picked up a couple of new followers. I really appreciate that. It's really been growing very slowly, but I'm glad it is. I really appreciate all you guys. Thank you for listening. Have a good day.